Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Welcome back to Tableau Snippet and iSelf Academy YouTube channel. In today's video, we will talk about module number 4. And in module number 4, we are going to learn what is called as joins and how we're going to use a data model in Tableau. Again, if I switch back or if I go back to talk about where or when the data model actually came into existence. Before 2020.2 version, we never had a logic called data modeling. In Tableau, we had only joins. But in our data set, after 2020.2 version, we do have data modeling here. I'll just show you what is data model and join is all about, and we will go for a detailed idea about what is a join is all about. So before I go into the Tableau point and then start working with the data set, I'm going to take a data set which has a multiple data point in it. Let me just come back to our base data here, and then I'll show you how the data will look like. So I'm going to take a data set from an European country where we are going to sell the product in different dimensions here. So I have 3 different sheets here. I have a list of orders. This is a logic where when we are working on a star schema in any of the BI tool, we can know about this better. When I normally pick up a data set, and if I have a unique data throughout the table, then I'll call that as dim or a dimension table. And if I'm going to have that with a multiple duplication in it, then I call that as a fact table. Combining of these two kind of table can be called as star schema in a normal BI tools. In my current data set, I have a list of orders, or order breakdown, and I have one more dimension called sales target. Again, in our next module, we will be using how to compare and contrast what is the sales done with a target here. There we will talk about more on blending of data set. So in this video, I'm not concentrating on blending. I'm talking about more on the joining and models here. It doesn't make really big differences when I do deal with a data model or a joint here. A data model will be a logical table for us, and if you go into the joins, it will become a physical table for us. So I'll just show you those once we come back here. But before I go too deep into it, I would like to give you an idea about what is joint. I have a small presentation which iterates what is a joint is all about. So this is the iteration that I would like to add in this list. Normally when I go into joins, again, this joins will be similar to most of the joins where we deal with any databases. We do have the same joint component comes in play. In today's world, the joint has become a multi-referential logic. But again, as far as I know, these are the 4 logics that I regularly use. Out of that, only 2 of them are quite regularly used. So we have 4 different logics that we have on join front. One is called inner joint, right joint, left joint, and full joint. If you are coming from the latest school, probably you will immediately understand what this diagram looks like. We call it as Venn diagram in math, and probably we would have learned this in our high school. Somewhere in the 8th grade to 10th grade, we would have learned about this. Again, that's what this joint is all about. There is a little bit of math involved in joint, so those who don't like math, don't be afraid of it. So it's going to be a pretty simple logic to understand. What is an inner join? So normally when I get a table, you can see that there are 2 different tables that I have here. I don't want to mention that whether it is a dim or a fact table here, because it can be a dim table or it can be a fact table. So we're not going to go for the star schema structure yet. We're going to talk about 2 different tables that I'm going to pull into the place here. So now I have one table talks about my customer and their gender and age. The next table talks about my customer or my employee with their title and their wage. When I try to connect it, sometime my employee might also be my customer, or my customer might also be my employee. In that way it works. So when I connect these 2 data set with an inner joint, it is going to pick up those names which comes in both the table together, and then it's going to extract all those data set. It's going to give you the data set accordingly here. So when I go to the next level, you can see automatically we have Jack and Susan are coming in both the tables. And when I go furthermore, then the other people are not a part of my table combination when I do an inner join, because I'm not going to take Adam or Benjamin or Nick nor Mary and John here, because they are all individual entity for the respective table here. So when I go back to the next logic, then when I combine them all, you can see this data set automatically brings those data which matches with one another. Sometimes this can be done a much more different way. Sometimes I will be interested in taking on the left hand side table completely. But right hand side table, wherever we have a match, we will do it. That's where our next logic will come into play. We call this as left outer joint. Now if I have two different tables, and then I'm saying that I'm going to connect the table from the left to right, or left outer joint is what I'm going to deal with. So when I connect these two data set, automatically when I do that, it's going to take the data from the right hand side table and remove those data out of the equation, and it's going to continue with the customer table completely, irrespective of whether it is matching the data set or not. When I do that, you can see that when I extract the data set in on the left outer joint, you can get a data set in this particular pattern where I have the matched field will also come into play, but my left hand side table will be completely available for me for my usage. This can be done on the other way around also. That's called the next logic called right outer joint. And this time around, the table was being selected in a particular pattern, and then you can see my employee data will definitely come in this data set. And my customer table, wherever it matches, that's going to come into play. That's how the right outer joint is going to work. Sometimes we do full joint. So irrespective of whether we have the match or not, I'm going to take all of them into consideration. So both my table will be there available here, and wherever we have a match, it's going to populate that match line exactly in the data set. This is how we normally deal with joints. Again, joints is a little complex topic to learn, so I will always request people to learn more about it, because in today's world the topic of data sets are becoming different here. So when I normally go for a recap, the inner joint and full joints are the most used joints here. Let me just check out whether I have anything on my picture downloads where I can show you one more dimension here. Let me just open that, and then I'll come back to that point and I'll show you how the data set is going to work for us. Hold for a second, please. So I just told you about the joints a little while earlier, and we talked about left, right, and full outer joint and inner joint. Again, recently I come across this when I browse something, and I saw I was a little serious about it, and it was really nice. And we see 3 or 4 type of joints that we saw like earlier. Now I have 9 different joints that comes into play. So you can see left anti-joint, right anti-joint, inner unique joint, right semi, and left semi joint. So these are the joints that I'm recently seeing it. I don't know how this is going to work. In Tableau, we will only see the 4 that I have explained to you. You can see the data set that comes in place here, and then these are the different varieties of joints we can establish. But in Tableau, I always go for the first 4, the left, right, and full outer joint and inner joint. These are the 4 that I saw even in Tableau for us. So let's jump into Tableau and see how it's going to work for us. So I'm going to go back to our data set, and then I'm going to bring in a data that I showed you earlier. So it's an Amazing Mart EU is the data set that I'm going to use here. When I do that, the system will wait for the most of the time. Whenever I added a data set, the data set always shows up automatically, because most of my data set that I used so far in our last 7 videos, it was only a singular data set. We never had multiple sheets like I have in Excel right now. Whenever we have more number of data with us, the system is little fuzzy about it, and it's going to wait for you and then say that please bring what data that you want to bring first. So based on that, we can definitely add some output out of it. So that's what the system will say. And this time around, I'm interested in showing the joints and how the data set is going to work for us in our joints and in our joints and in our data modeling. We talked about data modeling a little better earlier, so let's see how we're going to use this even more better than this. So let's bring in the two data set. In our next video, probably when I started using the compare and contrasting data set, I'll be using a logic called blending. At that time, I'll be using the third data set here called sales target. Let me drag the list of orders first. And now when I drag the order breakdown, now you will see there is a kind of a thread, or I'll call this in a simple language, a noodles kind of structure will populate here. This is what we call it as data modeling. When I leave this is going to automatically connect with one another. And when I place the cursor on top of my data set, it's going to call this as logical table. The reason why it's calling this as a logical table is if you cannot select both the tables simultaneously. When I click the order breakdown, you'll see all the order breakdowns here. When I click the list of orders, you will see a list of orders here. If you want to create this as a join that I have explained a little while earlier, then probably this is not the way we can do it. So I will remove the logical table here out of the equation. When I place the cursor on top of the list of orders, it will say that if you want to go from a logical table to a physical table connection, then you have to go into the list of orders by double clicking it. So normally I'll just open the data set here. That's going to give you the list. And now I can join this data set. And before I join the data set, this is the dim table that I have here, because I have got only the list of orders. The order ID will come only once that is a data set when I do deal with it. When I drag and drop the order breakdown, it's going to automatically show you one inner joint. And when the inner joint comes into play, when two tables are connected physically with one another, then you can see automatically on the left hand side the order numbers are becoming multiples in some cases, because my order breakdown has the data set in such a way that the data can be used to exactly extract whatever you want. If you want to change this data set to a little different list, then I can just click this data. Then you can see the 4 different joins that we have just now gone through it via PPT. You can see that. Then when I pick up this to a left joint, then my left hand table will be the highlight one. Right joint, you can see that the data are changing here completely. But in this situation, I will most of the time use an inner join to our list. We will see how we can use a left joint alone with a different data set when I start working on Tableau Advanced for us. As I told you earlier, we do a lot of data set connection in the joints, either by an inner joint or by full joint. Very rare scenario we touch the left and right joints here. So I still want to pursue the inner joints. When I come back to the data set, you can see the data set comes in beautifully here. Now I want to create a data set completely, and if you see, my data sets are giving you a hierarchy and other component automatically, because my data set is built in that way. If you want to know how to create a hierarchy, then I can just click this and remove the hierarchy here. Then that will become a simple field for me. Now you can see what are the different tables that I took to create a hierarchy that is showcasing in here when I break my hierarchy here. So now I can recreate it. It's not a tough job. So I want to use each and every data set. I'm going to drag the data set and then place it in the country part here. And you can get the hierarchy automatically, or you can just click the country here. And then you can start creating a hierarchy if you want it. So how do you want to create a hierarchy here? You can create them all of this list. So when I go back to the list here, call create a hierarchy, then that's going to give a list. The name I'm going to call this as geolocation. And then it is starting with a country here. Then once the geolocation hierarchy is started, I'm going to put them in an order, because I need to drill this data set one step at a time, because there are some places in the world which has similar names for multiple places. So Chinatown is available not just in China, even in the US we have it. So something like that. We have a lot of local names that is used across the state or across the countries and so on and so forth. So I'm going to bring the data set in an order. So I'm going to bring and add this below my country here. Then I'm going to add the city below my state here. So now we got the hierarchy that comes into play. This was only created by itself, but sometimes the data might not have a hierarchy, so we might be creating a hierarchy. I'm going to drag and drop the hierarchies in the system. And when I do that, it automatically goes to each and every data set nicely, and then you can see the country comes in play. When I click the hierarchy level 1 down, you can see the state. When I click the hierarchy level 1 furthermore down, then you can see a lot of cities. In some situations, you will see an unknown data set. The system cannot read the city correctly. because of some nature or other. I'm not really interested in going for the city level right now. I'm interested in going by sales level here. Now I want to find out what is the data set that I did in here. I'm going to create a calculated field for the first time in our last time, because this would have been done in the first video itself, but I have created that already in my Excel sheet, so I never created a calculated field. I want to create what is a profit margin that I made out of my sales here. So normally when I add a sales here, you can see that I'm going to bring the size of the sales into play. Then you can see the major sales is done. There are only few. United Kingdom has done a major sale here, and then the next major sale is done in France and Germany. Other sales are quite a little here. Then when I dragged out, and then I want to just see what is the size of the profit that I made in here. Again, the profits is also becoming a little weird here. And again, UK is making a lot of profit. Germany has done something, and then France. So usually if I want to make the color variance here, that would be nice. Means then I can drag the profit to the colors here. That's going to tell you the color variance here, and then the profit making and loss making company can be seen very nicely. If you want to change the color to a specific dimension, you can come back to the colors here and then edit the color, and you can pick the color in a multiple dimension. I'm going to pick red and blue diverging here. Then this is going to become different. Okay, right, the red and blue. Then I say apply, and then okay, it's going to show the red and blue here. You can see only few places where we are making a lot of money. Now I want to make a profit margin here, so I'm going to drag out all the data set out of the equation. I'm going to create a profit margin. If I want to create a profit margin, I want to add all my profit and then divide that, adding all my sales here. So that's how I can do it. I can create a calculator field. I'm going to place the cursor in profit and then create calculator field. And then I call this as profit margin. But again, profit margin cannot be a one-liner. I'm going to call this the sum of my profits. And then I'm going to just say divide that by sum of my sales. So I'm going to close the bracket and check out whether the calculation is valid. Yes, the system says that it is valid. I'm going to give an apply and an OK. Now this is coming with a different data type here. So you can see that the data type is decimals here. Then I can drag and drop this by size now. The sizes are varying here, and then I want to drag and drop the profit margin by colors here. Then you can see that where we made money, where we didn't, and the size of the data set is too bigger. So let me just reduce the size a little lesser here, so that I can see the data set nicely. Now I can come back by country wise, and I can even go to deeper like a city wise. Again, this is way too much to absorb. So this is how we can create the data set. When I do create a calculator field, you will see an AGG profit margin. So it is an aggregation of profit margin that I get here. I'm going to see the dimension that comes to play. If I want to make it a green and blue, that would be nice. Means that I can change the colors into green and blue. So I'm going to put the green as my profit plus points, and then minus points will be in blue. So I'm going to just convert this from a red and point. I'll say green and blue diverge, and then I'll say apply and OK. Then you can see my losses are in green, or I can just reverse this point by just coming down here and then say reverse the color here. Then all my profit will be in green, all my losses will be in blue. You can create a data set like this. So this is how we will play around with data modeling and joints here. I just used a simple logic to create a data modeling and joint, and I just showed you what is the hierarchy is all about on this list, and then I showed you how the profit and the sales and the combination of profit and sales to find out the profit margin, how we can check out what's happening in this data set. And if you want to make this by top 10 selling company, and then you can add more filters to the data set, you can do that. For next video, I'm going to just add one more dimension to our data set and then show how I can add a filter like I added in our previous video. And when I do add the changes in these filters, then it's going to make our life really very good. So this video is becoming a little bigger, so that's the reason why I'm stopping it in between. And we will see the continuation of what we have done in this data set in our next video. This is Vinod signing off from Tableau ScatterPlot and Filter Academy YouTube channel. Happy life.